You know that feeling when you finally book a flight for a vacation?
Oh, yeah. Best feeling in the world.
Right. Like you go through all the tabs, you pick your seat, you enter the credit card info, and then boom.
The confirmation email?
Exactly. The second you get that email, there's this like immense physical sense of relief. You see the booking reference number, you see the itinerary, and in your mind, the job is just done.
Yeah. The heavy lifting is over.
Right. You're going to Hawaii.
You're practically on the beach already.
But, I mean, if we actually look at the mechanics of air travel, having a confirmation number does not mean you are truly ready to fly.
No, not at all. It just means you paid.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you factored in, like, the rush hour traffic on the way to the airport.
Right.
It doesn't mean your bags are packed to meet that strict 50-pound weight limit, you know?
Oh, I've been burned by that one at the check-in counter.
We all have. And it doesn't mean you know which of the 3 terminals to go to, and it definitely doesn't mean you are physically standing at the gate when Group 3 is called to board.
Exactly. You don't actually have a seat yet. You just have, a slot on a ledger somewhere.
Yes. And when we apply that illusion of readiness to the world of non-emergency medical transportation, the stakes change dramatically.
Oh, massively.
Yeah.
We aren't talking about missing a vacation anymore.
No. We're talking about a passenger who might be, I don't know, dependent on oxygen or using a bariatric wheelchair or dealing with severe cognitive decline. The stakes aren't a missed flight to Hawaii. The stakes are a missed dialysis treatment.
Right, or like a delayed hospital discharge that literally backs up an entire emergency room.
Wow, yeah.
Because that distinction between a trip being scheduled on a computer screen and a trip being operationally ready in the physical world, that is the central paradox we have to unravel today.
Yeah, and if we can shift the collective mindset to understand the mechanics behind that gap, I mean, we can solve a massive amount of friction in the modern healthcare journey.
Absolutely. It's a total game changer.
And that is exactly what we are doing today. Welcome to the Deep Dive. We are exploring the incredibly complex, often misunderstood infrastructure of non-emergency medical transportation.
Or NEMT, as you'll hear it called.
Right, NEMT. And we're drawing heavily from the NEMT Ride Readiness Guide, put together by SwiftAid Transport.
It's an incredible resource.
It really is. Our core mission here is to figure out how you, whether you are, a patient managing your own care or a caregiver balancing a dozen responsibilities.
And even a healthcare professional trying to coordinate a totally chaotic discharge floor.
Exactly. We want to show you how to master the physical logistics of medical transport. We want to completely replace dangerous assumptions with rock-solid mechanical confirmation.
And to do that safely, we need to establish the boundaries of what we are actually analyzing today, right out of the gate.
Yes, absolutely. We are going to be going incredibly deep into the operational mechanics of medical transportation, looking at the structural systems and the communication flow. But I need to be perfectly clear about something before we jump in.
Yeah, the disclaimer.
Right. This discussion is meant to provide general education only. We are not here to provide individualized medical advice, legal advice, insurance advice, Medicaid eligibility, coverage, or regulatory advice of any kind.
Because every single healthcare situation is totally unique.
Exactly. Every jurisdiction is unique.
Yeah.
So you must always consult with your own professionals, coordinators, and legal counsel for your specific needs.
Yeah, we're looking at the logistics, not the law.
Right. What we are doing is speaking directly to you, the patients, the caregivers, the discharge planners, the facility administrators. There is a massive shared responsibility required to make these trips successful.
It's a team effort.
And our goal is to give you the operational blueprint to actually make that happen.
Which is such a critical foundation to lay. Because, to understand why a scheduled vehicle isn't always a ready vehicle, we first have to really define what NEMT actually is.
And what it isn't.
Yes. Just as importantly, what it absolutely is not. NEMT operates within a very specific, carefully balanced ecosystem.
Okay, so let's define the parameters. The source material defines non-emergency medical transportation as transportation for eligible or private pay passengers to reach healthcare when ordinary transport is unavailable, inappropriate, or insufficient.
Right, so we are talking about the connective tissue for planned healthcare.
Planned healthcare, okay.
Yeah. Rides to primary care, dialysis centers, physical therapy, behavioral health clinics, dental care, standard hospital discharges, that sort of thing.
So it's the essential appointments that keep the chronic and preventative care systems running.
Exactly. It is the vital physical bridge between a patient's home and their ongoing healthcare. But We have to bold and underline the most crucial word in that acronym.
Non-emergency.
Non-emergency. This is strictly, categorically not an emergency response service.
The guide is super explicit about this boundary line.
Oh, absolutely. If a passenger develops symptoms or a condition requiring immediate medical evaluation or intervention, you do not call an NEMT provider to see if they, have a van nearby.
Right, you don't call the dispatch line.
No. You follow established emergency procedures and you call 911.
So if someone is experiencing shortness of breath or chest pains, you don't call the clinic's transportation coordinator to book a sedan for that afternoon.
No. You call an ambulance. NEMT is planned, scheduled, stable transport.
Got it. But here is where the operational reality gets incredibly messy. The guide talks about this ecosystem of shared responsibility.
Yeah, it states that no single person controls every part of a medical transportation trip.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. That shared ecosystem is the core vulnerability of the entire system. But, it's also its greatest strength when the gears actually mesh correctly.
Walk me through that. What does that architecture look like?
Well, think about a single trip. It relies on 3 distinct pillars. First, the patient or their caregiver has to accurately understand and communicate their own physical needs.
Okay, pillar 1.
Right. Second, the healthcare facility has to coordinate the clinical timing and the physical handoff.
The handoff, yeah.
And third, the transportation provider, which is really an umbrella term for the coordinators taking the reservation, the dispatchers routing the fleet, and the drivers executing the physical movement.
So there are a lot of cooks in this kitchen.
Exactly. And if any one of those 3 pillars operates on a mental assumption rather than a confirmed fact, the structural integrity of the trip just collapses.
It feels like there's a massive psychological blind spot here. When I book a rideshare to go to a restaurant, I have a map on my phone. The driver has the same map on their phone. I assume they see the exact same world I see.
Right. The app makes it look seamless.
Exactly. So why are we so prone to these dangerous assumptions in the medical transport space?
Well, it's a cognitive bias that's often called the curse of knowledge.
The curse of knowledge.
Yeah. We subconsciously assume that because we are deeply familiar with a piece of information, everyone else must inherently know it too.
Well, that makes sense.
Take a discharge nurse who has worked in the same massive hospital for 15 years. She knows that all orthopedic patients leave through the East Wing rehabilitation entrance on the basement level.
Right, she knows like the back of her hand.
Exactly. So when she books the ride, she might just provide the hospital's main billing address. She assumes the transportation company, who operates in the same city, must naturally know about the East Wing basement door.
Because to her, it's the most obvious thing in the world.
Precisely. Or, from the patient's perspective, think about your own house. If you live in a house with 5 steep brick steps leading up to your front porch, you see those steps every single day.
Right. They're an obvious fact of my reality.
Yeah, so you might assume the driver pulling up will naturally know you need physical assistance navigating those stairs. Because, the steps are right there in plain sight.
Right, obviously I need help to look at my house.
Exactly. Our brains take these shortcuts to save cognitive energy. But in the world of logistics, assumptions are basically sabotage.
Because the dispatcher isn't looking at my house.
Right. A transportation dispatcher sitting at a computer terminal 3 towns away cannot see your brick steps, and they do not inherently know the architectural layout of the East Wing basement.
Wow. Yeah.
That is why the absolute core mantra of this source material, the philosophy that governs everything else we're going to discuss today, is ride readiness replaces assumptions with confirmation.
Ride readiness replaces assumptions with confirmation. I love that.
You have to consciously verbalize and document the physical realities you think are obvious.
I hear you on the logistical necessity. I really do. But I want to push back a little bit on behalf of the patients and the overwhelmed caregivers listening right now.
Sure, go for it.
If I'm dealing with a chronic illness, or if I'm exhausted from 3 hours of dialysis, or if I'm a caregiver trying to manage a loved one's 6 different medications, requiring me to act like a logistics manager feels incredibly burdensome.
Yeah, I completely understand that. Shouldn't the transportation company, the professionals who do this for a living, just figure it out when they arrive?
It's an incredibly valid concern. When the body is failing or when the mental load of caregiving is peaking, the very last thing you have energy for is data entry and logistical coordination.
Exactly. It's just one more thing on the plate.
But we have to look at the mechanical reality of what happens when we leave those details to chance. If a transportation company just tries to figure it out upon arrival, the math often just doesn't work.
What do you mean?
Let's say a clinic dispatcher requests a standard sedan for a patient, just assuming it'll be fine. The driver arrives and discovers the patient actually uses a specialized power wheelchair that weighs 350 pounds.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the sedan is physically useless.
Completely useless. Now, the driver cannot safely or legally transport the patient. The patient is left stranded on the sidewalk.
That's awful. It is. The critical medical appointment is missed, disrupting their care plan. The transportation provider has to scramble to find an available wheelchair van, which might be an hour away.
So the stress for everyone just skyrockets.
Exponentially. It skyrockets exponentially compared to the effort it would have taken to just confirm the wheelchair type up front.
I see.
Providing accurate information isn't about shifting the burden onto the patient. It's about protecting the patient's dignity and shielding them from logistical chaos on the actual day of the trip.
Okay, that reframes it completely. So doing the heavy lifting at the reservation stage is actually an act of self-preservation.
Exactly. You are building a protective barrier around the actual day of travel.
That leads us directly into the physical mechanics of the ride itself. How do we actually match the vehicle to the human? Because the guide emphatically states that transportation mode must match the clinical need, not convenience.
Yes. This is where we transition from abstract planning to, physical engineering.
Okay, let's get into the engineering.
The industry generally divides non-emergency medical transport into several tiers, but the foundational distinction is between ambulatory service and wheelchair service.
Ambulatory and wheelchair.
Right. And these aren't just arbitrary labels. They represent entirely different vehicle classes and entirely different driver training requirements.
Let's break those down. Starting with ambulatory. If I hear ambulatory, I just think walking. Is it really that simple?
Mostly, yes. Operationally, an ambulatory passenger is someone who can generally walk to and from the vehicle, but critically, it's someone who can physically transfer into a standard passenger seat.
Transfer to a seat. Okay.
Right. They might use a cane or a walker, and they might require the driver to offer a steadying arm, utilizing the level of assistance the provider is legally allowed to give. But ultimately, they are sitting in a normal car seat using a standard seatbelt.
And wheelchair service implies specialized hardware.
Exactly. Wheelchair service requires a highly modified, accessible vehicle. Typically, this is a commercial van equipped with a mechanical lift or a heavy-duty ramp.
Right, because you can't just lift a heavy chair into a trunk.
No, definitely not. It is specifically designed to accommodate and secure the passenger while they remain seated in their mobility device for the entire duration of the trip.
Okay, so this highlights a fascinating nuance. What if a patient uses a wheelchair for distance, right? Like walking through the hospital is too much.
Yeah.
But they actually have the physical mobility to stand up, pivot their body, and sit down in a normal car seat.
Yeah.
And their wheelchair is the kind that folds up like a lawn chair and goes in the trunk.
Right, a standard folding manual chair.
Yeah. Is that an ambulatory trip or a wheelchair trip?
It absolutely is an ambulatory trip, and this is a classic point of confusion in the industry.
Because the patient uses a wheelchair, so the natural instinct is to request wheelchair service.
Exactly. But if they can transfer to a seat, dispatching a specialized mechanical lift van is actually a massive misallocation of resources.
Because someone else might really need that van.
Yes. That specialized van could have been routed to someone who is paralyzed and physically cannot transfer out of their chair.
Oh, wow. So you can't just request a roomy van because it sounds more comfortable?
No.
Or ask for a sedan because you don't want to ride in a commercial vehicle?
Mm.
The dispatch decision is dictated by the laws of physics and the physical requirements of the passenger at that exact moment.
Exactly. Which means the reservation process has to act like a diagnostic tool.
A diagnostic tool. I like that.
The coordinator needs to ask highly specific, seemingly intrusive questions. Can the passenger walk independently? Do they use a walker, and does it fold? Can they physically transfer into the passenger seat?
That makes a lot of sense.
Are there architectural barriers like stairs at the pickup location? Is a trained personal care attendant traveling with them to provide assistance the driver cannot provide?
It's basically a logistical physical exam. But even if we flawlessly diagnose the clinical need, right, and we dispatch the perfect mechanical lift van driven by the most experienced driver in the fleet, the entire operation still crashes into a wall if the location data is vague.
Oh, absolutely. Location data is critical.
The guide makes a point that I think should be, framed and hung in every hospital administration office in the country. It says, A single street address is never enough.
It is the single most common point of failure in the entire NEMT ecosystem.
Really, just the address.
Yes, the belief that an address is a destination.
If I'm thinking about how an outpatient clinic operates, I can see how this happens. The front desk receptionist is handling 10 things at once.
Oh yeah, they are totally overwhelmed.
They are processing insurance copays, answering 3 ringing phone lines, handing out clipboards. I can easily see how they just punch 123 Main Street into the transportation portal, hit send, and in their mind, they have completely solved the problem.
And if 123 Main Street is a small, standalone dental office with a single front door, they might get away with it. But what if 123 Main Street is a sprawling, multi-building, 50-acre hospital complex?
It's a nightmare. I've been lost on those campuses just walking from my car.
Exactly. You have the emergency room on the north side, outpatient surgery on the south, a massive parking deck in the middle, and specialized clinics hidden in the basement.
So imagine being the driver of a large commercial van trying to navigate that.
Right. The GPS takes the driver to the geographic center of the street address, which might be a loading dock half a mile away from the actual patient.
Wow. And they have no idea where to go from there.
None. The driver is separated from the passenger by security gates, one-way ambulance roads, and confusing signage.
And the medical facility might have one official mailing address for all their billing, but they have 12 different physical entrances for patients.
Exactly. If the transportation request just says 123 Main Street, the driver is essentially blindfolded.
So what does a truly ready location coordinate look like? How specific do we need to be?
The guide stresses that you need a granular level of detail. The building name, the specific entrance, like North Tower main lobby.
Okay, North of Tower main lobby.
The department, the floor number. And sometimes specific access instructions like driver must check in with the security guard at the gate before proceeding to the awning.
That is incredibly specific, but this isn't exclusively a hospital problem, is it?
Not at all.
Let's think about a residential pickup. The patient is at home, trying to get to their cardiologist. The address is 456 Oak Lane.
Okay.
The driver arrives at the street address, but 456 Oak Lane is a sprawling, gated apartment complex, and the driver pulls up to the keypad, but they don't have the gate code.
Yes. And they can't tailgate another car in because they are driving a commercial vehicle and could be liable for gate damage.
Exactly. They are stuck outside. Meanwhile, the patient is sitting in their living room, completely dressed, totally ready, staring out the window and panicking that they're going to miss their heart specialist.
And the vehicle is physically standing at the correct latitude and longitude, but they are operationally entirely unable to locate the passenger.
Because of a missing 4-digit code.
Exactly. We see this constantly with environmental barriers, too.
Like what kind of barriers?
Steep residential driveways where a heavy lift van simply cannot safely deploy as ramp because the angle is too extreme.
Oh, I never thought of that. The ramp has to be level.
Right, or high-density urban streets with limited parking where a driver legally cannot idle the van to go inside and help a patient out.
Wow, yeah.
Road construction, completely blocking the cul-de-sac. Broken apartment intercoms. The person booking the ride, whether it's the patient or a coordinator, has to communicate these physical barriers.
Because the dispatcher in an office building doesn't know your specific driveway is a 40-degree incline.
No, they have no idea. Or that your apartment buzzer is broken.
It goes back to the curse of knowledge. You know your buzzer is broken, so you figure everyone knows. Okay, so we've mapped out the physical space, but we also have to map out the dimension of time. The guide points out a crucial logistical trap, the massive difference between an appointment time and a required arrival time.
Yes. If you misunderstand this distinction, the entire trip is compromised before the engine even starts.
Let's walk through the mechanics of that. Say I have a typical morning. I have a diagnostic imaging procedure scheduled. The clinic tells me the appointment is at 10 a.m.
Okay?
So naturally, I tell the transportation provider I need to be there at 10 a.m.
And a logical dispatcher might schedule the drop-off for 9:50 a.m., giving you 10 minutes to walk in.
Sounds reasonable.
But what happens when you arrive at 9:50 a.m.? The clinic actually requires you to check in 45 minutes early to fill out complex consent forms, change into a medical gown, and do a preliminary consultation with the nurse.
Right. The 10 a.m. slot is when the MRI machine actually turns on, not when you walk through the lobby door.
Precisely. Your actual required arrival time was 9:15 a.m.
Because I arrived at 9:50.
The clinic's rigid schedule is broken, and your imaging procedure is canceled.
Just like that.
Just like that. The transportation must be engineered backwards from the required arrival time factoring in the clinic's specific intake process.
So the confirmation readback needs to sound like, my procedure is at 10:00, but I must be physically inside the building by 9:15.
Yes, that is exactly how you replace an assumption with a confirmed operational fact.
I love how precise that is.
Okay.
Okay, let's follow this timeline. We've successfully selected the mechanical lift fan. We gave the driver the gate code and the exact entrance. We arrived 45 minutes early. The patient gets their care.
Perfect outbound trip.
Right. But getting to the appointment is only half the battle. The mission isn't accomplished until the patient is safely back in their own living room.
It definitely isn't.
This brings us to what I want to call the forgotten half of the journey. Return trips and changing needs.
The forgotten half is the perfect framing for this, because the guide is very clear that a brilliantly executed outbound trip can completely fall apart into chaos if no one established who was responsible for the return trip before the appointment even began.
This feels like a major oversight in the industry. Everyone focuses on getting to the doctor on time, and then they just assume getting home will naturally work itself out.
They absolutely do.
So we are talking about two main types of returns here, right? A scheduled return versus a will call return. Let's start with scheduled.
Okay, a scheduled return is straightforward on paper. It provides a fixed, planned pickup time.
Like saying, pick me up at 2 p.m.
Right. If you have an appointment that you know reliably takes exactly 1 hour and your appointment starts at 1 p.m., you might schedule the return vehicle to be at the clinic doors at 2 p.m.
But medical appointments are notoriously, predictably unpredictable. I mean, I can't remember the last time a doctor saw me at the exact minute I was scheduled.
Oh, almost never. Which is why the vast majority of unpredictable medical trips utilize a will call return structure.
A will call return.
Yeah, a will call arrangement generally means the transportation provider is only contacted to initiate the return trip after the appointment is completely finished and the patient is truly ready to leave.
This is where I think the modern technology landscape has created a dangerous expectation.
How so?
People are used to rideshare apps. I pull out my phone, I tap a button, and a black car magically appears at the curb 3 minutes later.
Oh, right, the Uber effect.
Exactly. But the guide highlights a really critical reality. A will call arrangement in NEMT does not guarantee an immediate vehicle upon calling.
That is a vital operational truth that patients and facility staff must absorb. An EMP is not an on-demand taxi service.
It's not just waiting around the corner.
No, it is a complex, scheduled, often shared ride ecosystem. When a clinic calls dispatch to say, Mr. Smith is ready to go home, that provider has to look at their fleet, their current capacity, their active routing, and their legal driver hours.
They have to figure out the puzzle in real time.
Right. They have to dispatch a vehicle from wherever it currently is in the city.
Meaning there is going to be a wait time.
Often a significant one. If a patient or a discharge nurse expects a specialized wheelchair van to be idling at the curb the very second they hang up the phone, they are setting themselves up for a deeply frustrating adversarial afternoon.
And the guide requires facilities to plan for this reality.
It does. And this wait time highlights the extreme physical and emotional vulnerability of the patient post-appointment. The guide warns healthcare facilities about this specifically.
Because the physical handoff is where safety protocols often break down, right?
Exactly. A facility cannot simply wheel a vulnerable patient down to an unattended automatic sliding door, leave them in the vestibule, and assume the ride is waiting outside.
That sounds incredibly dangerous.
It is. Facilities must confirm the mechanics of the pickup process.
They need an actual plan for the waiting period.
Yes. Who is actually making the phone call? Is it the patient's responsibility or is the receptionist doing it?
Because if both assume the other is doing it, nobody calls.
Right. And what phone number are they dialing? And most importantly, where is the patient waiting safely while the vehicle is routed?
Because if a facility drops a patient with dementia or severe mobility issues at an exit and walks away.
And that will call vehicle is realistically 45 minutes away in traffic. That is a massive safety failure. The patient could wander, they could fall, or they could suffer exposure from the weather.
Okay, let me throw a different scenario at you. Let's say you did set up a scheduled return. You chose the fixed time. You scheduled the van for 2 p.m.
Okay.
But the doctor's office is completely backed up. It's now 2:30 p.m., and you were still sitting in the exam room in a paper gown.
A classic scenario.
Right. If I'm that patient, I am panicking that my ride is going to abandon me. How does a patient handle a scheduled return that is falling apart?
The scenario is exactly why the guide insists that patients and caregivers keep the transportation provider's phone numbers immediately accessible at all times.
You have to communicate.
Yes. If your appointment is running late, the silence is your enemy.
Silence is the enemy.
You or your caregiver or the clinic staff must report that delay promptly to dispatch. Early notice gives the transportation team a window to adjust.
How do they adjust?
Well, they might reroute that specific driver to another nearby trip and assign a later driver to you, ensuring you aren't stranded and the fleet keeps moving.
What actually happens mechanically if you just don't call? If you just sit in the exam room and hope the driver will wait indefinitely?
There is a brilliant phrase in the source material for this. It says, "Silence does not preserve the transportation plan. It only delays discovery of the problem."
Wow, that's powerful.
Isn't it? If you don't communicate, here's what mechanically happens. The driver arrives at the clinic at 2 p.m. as scheduled. They wait the legally or contractually required grace period, which is often just 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay.
They attempt to locate you. When they realize you aren't there, dispatch requires them to leave to go pick up their next scheduled patient.
Because they can't ruin everyone else's day.
Exactly. They cannot make 5 other people late for one delay.
So you were marked as a no-show.
You become a no-show. When you finally walk out to the lobby at 4 p.m., your ride is completely gone, and the provider might not have another vehicle available until the evening.
And I imagine a lack of communication doesn't just hurt the patient sitting in the clinic. It creates a domino effect across the entire transportation network.
Ooh, the ripple effect is massive.
Like what?
Let's say a patient goes in for a routine clinic visit, but during the exam, the doctor discovers something alarming and decides the patient needs to be admitted to the main hospital immediately.
A completely unexpected change in the clinical plan.
It happens every day.
Yep.
Now, the patient is being transported to the hospital via ambulance,
Right.
but if nobody at the clinic remembers to call the NEMT provider to cancel the routine return trip, a driver is eventually dispatched to that clinic for a phantom trip.
A phantom trip.
Yes. That driver spends 20 minutes circling the parking lot, talking to the front desk, trying to find a patient who is already in a hospital bed on the other side of town.
And while that driver is chasing a ghost, another patient is waiting on their porch, wondering why their ride to dialysis is 20 minutes late.
Exactly. One uncommunicated cancellation knocks over the dispatch board for the rest of the day.
That is wild.
Promptly reporting changes, whether it's a delay, a cancellation, or a sudden change in the patient's mobility status, is the only way to keep this shared ecosystem functioning.
Okay, speaking of mobility status, let's look closer at the specific hardware traveling with the patient. Because in NEMT, it is very rarely just a person standing on a curb holding a handbag.
No, almost never.
We need to talk about accommodations. Specifically, the engineering of mobility devices and the regulations around service animals.
This is an area where operational precision is absolutely critical. We touched on the difference between ambulatory and wheelchair modes earlier, but the transportation reservation must accurately and completely identify the specific device.
Right, because wheelchair is a broad category, not a mechanical specification.
Exactly. It is legally and operationally insufficient to just type the word wheelchair into a reservation form.
The guide lists a massive spectrum here. Manual wheelchairs, heavy-duty power wheelchairs, mobility scooters, canes, standard aluminum walkers, folding walkers, rollitors with seats, crutches. I mean, it's a whole world of different engineering.
It really is. And from a dispatch running perspective, the difference between a patient using a folding walker and a patient using a bariatric power wheelchair dictates the entire logistical approach.
Make that real for me.
Okay, if you have a folding walker, a standard 4-door sedan can likely accommodate you. If you have a power wheelchair, you require a highly specialized commercial van.
What happens if the equipment changes over time? Say a patient has been using a manual wheelchair for a year, so the NEMT provider has them profiled as needing a standard lift van.
Okay.
But their condition progresses, and Medicare approves them for a heavy-duty power scooter. If they don't explicitly report that hardware upgrade to the NEMT provider, what happens?
The system breaks down upon arrival. The driver shows up with the standard vehicle, looks at the new massive power scooter, and realizes they physically cannot transport it.
Because it's too big.
Too big, too heavy. And the guide goes even deeper into the mechanics of this. For accessible transportation, the provider often needs the exact physical dimensions, the length and width, and the total occupied weight of the device.
Wait, they actually need the exact physical dimensions and my weight. That feels incredibly invasive. Why does a dispatcher need to know how much I weigh while I'm sitting in my chair?
Right, it sounds that way, but think about the physics. It is strictly a matter of physics and safety regulations.
Okay, how so?
Every mechanical lift attached to a van has a maximum safe weight capacity engineered by the manufacturer. If a patient has a very heavy, specialized power chair featuring tilting mechanisms and heavy batteries...
And you add the physical weight of the passenger.
Exactly. That combined mass might exceed the safe operating limits of a standard lift. If the lift fails under load, the results are catastrophic.
Oh, wow. So they aren't being nosy. They're ensuring the hydraulic lift doesn't snap.
Exactly. Furthermore, once inside the van, the chair must be secured. The securement system, typically a 4-point tie-down system with heavy-duty retractor straps that lock the frame of the chair into steel tracks in the floor of the vehicle, requires specific spatial clearances.
Spatial clearances.
Yeah.
Meaning room to actually attach the straps.
Yes. If a new mobility scooter is 2 inches too long, it literally will not fit within the engineered securement footprint of that specific van.
And the driver can't just make it work.
No. The driver cannot legally or safely strap it down. The provider needs this data up front to ensure their vehicle meets the manufacturer specifications and federal safety guidelines for transport.
It is entirely about the physics of inertia. You have to know the mass and the dimensions to lock it down safely.
Exactly right.
Now, what about living accommodations? The guide dedicates space to service animals, and this is a topic absolutely flooded with cultural misconceptions and viral internet arguments.
It really is a minefield of misinformation out there. But the operational guidance here is very clear. The guide stresses that if a passenger is traveling with a trained service animal, they should communicate that fact during the reservation process whenever possible.
But they want to be clear. Communicating it in advance is not asking for permission.
Yeah.
Right? The provider can't deny the trip just because a dog is coming.
Absolutely not. Advance notice cannot be used to disregard the passenger's civil rights under the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Okay, so why tell them?
The reason you provide advance notice is strictly for safe coordination. For instance, if a specific driver on that route has a severe, medically documented dog allergy,
Oh, I see.
the dispatcher can simply route a different driver to that trip, ensuring both the passenger's rights are honored and the workforce remains safe.
That makes total sense. Let's define the legal parameters, though, because the guide points to the ADA definitions. What actually constitutes a service animal in this specific context?
Under the ADA, a service animal is generally defined as a dog that is individually trained to do work or perform tasks directly related to a person's disability.
Okay, here is the crucial fact from the source material that I know blows people's minds, because we see so much noise about this online. The ADA does not require a service animal to wear a special vest, display a holographic identification card, or possess any kind of government certification document.
That is correct, and it is a massive point of friction in transportation.
I want to highlight this because it feels like there is this collective assumption that there is a universal service dog license, like a driver's license, that you have to present on demand.
Right, you see those fake IDs sold online all the time.
But the ADA is clear. Mandatory vests and ID cards are a myth. Understanding this legal reality protects the patient's dignity and keeps the transportation provider out of a massive lawsuit.
Exactly.
A driver simply cannot demand to see a government certificate that does not legally exist before letting the animal on board the van.
Precisely. The operational and legal requirement is twofold. The animal must be trained to perform a specific task related to a disability, and the human handler must maintain physical or voice control of the animal at all times.
So it can't just be running wild.
Right. The animal cannot be roaming the van or acting aggressively. By understanding these exact legal parameters, providers can train their dispatchers and drivers to act respectfully and legally, and patients are empowered knowing exactly what their rights are.
So if we step back and look at the sheer volume of data we have discussed so far, the precise required arrival time, the exact entrance of the hospital, the physical dimensions and weight of a wheelchair, the presence of a service animal, the mechanics of the return trip.
It's a lot of data.
Coordinating a truly ready trip requires sharing a massive amount of personal detail. Which brings up a very delicate question. How do we balance getting the driver the logistical information they desperately need without violating a patient's medical privacy?
This is where we cross into the critical realm of information flow, high-pay regulations, and a concept known as the minimum necessary standard.
The minimum necessary standard.
Yeah. Transportation providers are a vital part of the healthcare ecosystem, and their drivers absolutely need certain operational information to complete the trips safely.
Like what?
They need to know the mobility needs, if an authorized escort is traveling, communication barriers, and specific pickup instructions. But they do not need the patient's entire medical chart.
Let's explore where that boundary line is drawn. It's like giving someone a recipe for a cake, right?
How do you mean?
If I need a baker to make me a gluten-free cake, I just give them the modified recipe. I don't need to send them my gastroenterologist's entire medical report detailing the history of my celiac disease.
That is a perfect analogy. The source material provides a brilliant guiding question for coordinators facing this exact dilemma. What information is authorized and reasonably necessary to coordinate the transportation safely and effectively?
Okay, so let's apply that. If I'm a clinic coordinator and I have a patient who is undergoing intense chemotherapy and the treatment makes them severely nauseous and dizzy,
Right.
I want the driver to be prepared for that reality.
Yeah.
Does the driver need to know the patient has cancer?
No. Under the minimum necessary standard, the diagnosis of cancer is not required for the driver to physically operate the vehicle safely.
Okay.
What is necessary is the operational precaution derived from that diagnosis. So the facility coordinator translates the clinical reality into a logistical instruction.
And what does that sound like?
They communicate to dispatch. The passenger may experience severe dizziness or nausea during transport. Please ensure a smooth ride and be prepared to pull over safely if the passenger requests it.
Ah, I see. You extract the symptom or the required physical action, and you leave the medical history behind the firewall.
Exactly. You share the operational instructions, and you share them exclusively through approved, secure communication channels. You don't yell across a crowded clinic waiting room, "Hey, the van is here for the nausea patient." You protect the data, but you arm the driver with the situational awareness they need.
That protects the patient's dignity and the provider's liability. Now, while we are focused on the clinical side of this ecosystem, we have to dedicate time to the most complex logistical maneuver of all, hospital discharges.
Oh, yes.
The guide dedicates a significant section to passenger and discharge readiness, and it paints a picture of a truly delicate, chaotic dance.
Hospital discharges are notoriously difficult to coordinate because they represent the intersection of clinical care, pharmacy, administration, and transportation.
It's a massive collision of departments.
Exactly. A patient might be technically medically cleared by a doctor to go home, but that is light years away from being operationally ready to roll out the front door.
What does true discharge readiness actually look like then?
It requires a massive checklist. The official discharge order must be signed by the attending physician. The post-care instructions must be thoroughly reviewed with the patient and family. Crucially, the final prescriptions must be physically filled and in the patient's hand.
Right, because you can't leave without the meds.
Their personal belongings must be packed up, their home mobility equipment must be secured, and the patient must be dressed in appropriate street clothing.
Right, they aren't going to travel across town in an open-backed hospital gown in January. And I imagine the destination has to be verified too.
Oh, absolutely.
If they're being discharged to an assisted living facility or a skilled nursing center, the receiving facility has to be notified, staffed, and have a bed ready to accept them.
Exactly. All of those complex, interdependent tasks take hours to complete. And the tension the guide highlights is the timing of the transportation request.
The timing.
Yes.
Yeah.
If a discharge planner books the transportation too early, say they book it the exact second the doctor signs the order, before the pharmacy has even received the prescription.
The driver arrives, and the patient isn't ready.
And the driver's just sitting in the loading zone.
For an hour or more.
Which causes extended wait times, pulls a vital accessible vehicle out of fleet circulation, and creates a massive domino effect that makes 3 other patients late for their appointments that afternoon.
But on the flip side, hospitals are under immense pressure to turn over beds.
Right.
If the hospital waits until the patient has their bags packed, the prescription's in hand, and is literally sitting in a wheelchair by the lobby door before they even start calling the NEMT provider.
They might discover that the next available specialized bariatric stretcher van is 3 hours away.
Oof, yeah.
Now, the patient is sitting in the lobby, exhausted and miserable, and arguably worse for the hospital, that patient's bed was tied up for 3 unnecessary hours, delaying the admission of a sick patient waiting down in the emergency room.
It feels like a complete catch-22. Book too early, you sabotage the transport fleet. Book too late, you sabotage the hospital's bed flow.
How does the guide suggest solving this?
The guide recommends shifting away from rigid scheduling and adopting what they call a staged approach.
A staged approach.
You stop dealing in absolutes and start dealing in continuous communication, almost like air traffic control.
Walk me through how the staged approach works in practice.
The facility begins the transportation planning early in the day, simply letting the NEMT provider know that a complex discharge is on the horizon.
Just a heads up.
Right. They communicate an estimated readiness window. They might say, "We anticipate Mr. Johnson will be clinically and administratively ready between 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. He requires a mechanical lift van."
So the provider can start vaguely routing a van toward that side of town.
Exactly. Then, crucially, the facility reports delays in real time. If the hospital pharmacy gets backed up, the nurse calls dispatch and says, "The pharmacy's delayed. Push that readiness window to 3 p.m."
And the transportation provider adjusts their routing board.
Yes. Finally, the facility only issues the final confirmation for the vehicle to approach the doors when the patient is truly staged, meaning bags packed, dressed, prescriptions in hand at the agreed-upon pickup location.
It transforms the process from a single, static transaction into an ongoing dialogue.
That's exactly it.
And that constant communication perfectly sets up the final, overarching concept of this entire guide. It is the ultimate antidote to the assumption problem we started with. The guide calls it closed-loop confirmation.
Closed-loop confirmation is the gold standard of logistics. It means that critical operational information is not just broadcasted out into the void. It is received, it is understood, and it is explicitly acknowledged by all participating parties.
It's the readback, like when you order at a drive-thru, and the voice on the speaker repeats your exact order back to you before you pull forward to make sure they didn't miss the extra fries, but applied to high-stakes medical transport.
Precisely. A complete closed-loop confirmation in NEMT systematically answers all the variables before the day of the trip.
What are those variables again?
Who exactly is traveling? What is the specific date? What is the granular pickup address, including the gate code and the specific entrance? What is the exact destination department? What is the required arrival time, factoring in check-in?
In the physical stuff?
Right. What is the scientifically matched transportation mode? What are the dimensions of the mobility equipment? Is an authorized escort or a service animal traveling? And what is the established protocol for the return trip?
When all of those interconnected pieces are locked in, verified, and explicitly acknowledged by the patient, the clinical facility, and the transport dispatch, that is the exact moment the trip transforms from just being scheduled on a ledger to being truly operationally ready.
All three pillars of the ecosystem are finally working from the exact same sheet of music. That is the definition of ride readiness.
This has been a massive journey through a system most people don't even think about until they desperately need it. We've mapped out the shared ecosystem, the critical engineering differences between mobility modes, the trap of vague locations, the forgotten logistics of return trips, the strict parameters of ADA and IAP, and the delicate staging of hospital discharges.
It's a lot to process.
It really is.
Right.
Let's synthesize all of this and summarize the ultimate takeaways for the three distinct audiences we've been speaking to today.
Sure. For the patients and the caregivers, your takeaway is empowerment through radical communication. Ride readiness is how you buy back your peace of mind.
Yes.
By speaking up, by providing the exact unvarnished details about your physical needs, the incline of your driveway, the dimensions of your power chair, and your plans for getting home, you systematically eliminate the anxiety of the unknown.
It takes the guesswork out of it.
Exactly. It leads to a safer, far more dignified healthcare experience where you are never left vulnerable on a curb.
And for the healthcare facilities, the frontline nurses, the discharge planners, the clinic administrators, the takeaway is operational efficiency. Emphasizing ride readiness means smoother, faster hospital discharges.
It really does.
It means clearer handoffs. It means eliminating those incredibly frustrating, avoidable coordination calls that eat up your afternoon. Stop sending vulnerable patients to unattended sliding doors, implement the staged approach for complex discharges, and translate clinical diagnoses into actionable operational instructions.
And finally, for the transportation providers, the coordinators answering the phones, the dispatchers routing the fleets, and the drivers navigating the physical world ride readiness is the bedrock of your entire operation.
It's what keeps the wheels turning.
Literally. It is what enables accurate vehicle selection, efficient scheduling, legal compliance with AD and HIPAA regulations, and ultimately, the safe delivery of the service you are contracted to provide.
It really all comes down to hunting down and eliminating any sentence that starts with the phrase, I thought.
Yes.
I thought they knew which entrance. I thought the wheelchair folded. I thought the clinic would request the return trip. We have to aggressively replace assumptions with confirmation. Now, before we close out this deep dive, we always like to leave you with a final, provocative thought to mull over. Something that builds on this ecosystem, but looks toward the horizon.
If we zoom out and look at the macro trends in the healthcare industry right now, our entire system is becoming increasingly rapidly decentralized.
Right.
We are steadily moving away from the era of massive centralized hospital campuses where every conceivable treatment happens under one single roof.
We are seeing a massive explosion of standalone outpatient clinics, specialized surgical centers built in strip malls, community dialysis hubs, and rural telehealth centers. The care is fragmenting geographically.
Exactly. And as the physical locations of care fragment, the connective tissue between all these different places is transportation.
Yeah, that's the only way it works.
NEMT is no longer just an auxiliary background service. It is a vital, load-bearing pillar of the care continuum. As this decentralization accelerates, the physical logistics of moving a human body safely from point A to point B is going to become just as critical to their health outcome as the million-dollar medical equipment waiting inside the clinic.
That is a profound shift.
How we communicate about that movement, how we master the data flow between a patient's home, the clinical team, and the physical vehicle, that might just be the next great frontier in patient care. Because ultimately, if a patient cannot reliably and safely get to the MRI machine, that MRI machine might as well not exist.
Transportation, as the next great frontier in patient care, that completely reframes how we should view this entire industry. It really highlights why mastering this operational process, why achieving true, confirmed ride readiness is so absolutely vital to the future of healthcare.
It really is.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden world of non-emergency medical transportation. We hope you walk away feeling more informed, more prepared, and fiercely ready to replace assumptions with confirmation in your own care journeys.
It has been a deeply fascinating exploration of a truly essential system.
The ride does not begin when the vehicle moves. It begins when everyone has the information needed to make the trip work.